I think we'll give it a go and get our session started. If those outside who would like to come in. My name is John Starr. I'm with AIMF, and the side event that we are undertaking is called Community, Talk Globally, Act Locally. The concept when we put this together was here is an opportunity for our international delegates from across the mountain world to see a way that our mountain community has been able to work locally to begin to make differences in these very difficult issues before us. Better? Thank you. What we have here is a very unusual panel. We have before us the mayors of every single valley community in our area, 43 miles long, and our friends from Vail and Eagle County have joined us. No one can remember the last time that all the elected officials, mayors, were in one place at one time, particularly to talk about issues of mountain sustainability and climate. I'm quite excited to hear today's panel and the discussions of how we now can take this forward in our own community as an example for others who can do it in their communities. So I'll pass it now to our moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. I also want to thank AIMF and the entire UN Mountain Partnership. This is a really incredible event, and it's an honor to be here. My name is Blaney. I'm the CEO of CORE, the Community Office for Resource Efficiency. CORE is a regional nonprofit with a 27-year history of working toward a net zero future by supporting improvements in building codes, advancing beneficial electrification for homes and businesses, and driving forward green energy innovation. One of the things we've learned at CORE out of these experiences is that collaboration both within and across communities is really the key to advancing our challenges or our goals towards sustainability and climate action. So it's really exciting to be here today and to engage in this conversation. The title of our panel today is, as John said, it's Community, Talking Globally, Acting Locally. Our panel is made up of elected officials from throughout our region, including mayors and county commissioners, who have come together to share their insights into the challenges and opportunities they see for advancing sustainability and carbon reduction. So it's really wonderful to have you all here, and as John said, it's really an incredible thing to get everybody together in the same room. The one instruction I've given everyone, given the time constraints and the number of panelists we have, is that we're going to start off with a 2-minute limitation for each panelist, with the hope that we'll have a little bit of time on the backside for audience questions. So speaking of the folks here next to me, it's my great honor to introduce the mayor of the town of Basalt, Bill Kane, and I'll just work my way down the row. County Commissioner for Eagle County, sorry, I'm gonna have to go to my list here. Matt Scherr, Pitkin County Commissioner, Greg Poschman, City of Aspen Mayor Torre, Town of Vail Mayor Kim Langmaid, City of Glenwood Springs Mayor Jonathan Godis, Town of Carbondale Mayor Ben Boomfalk, and Town of Snowmass Village Mayor Bill Madsen. So thank you all again so much for being here today. I'm really excited about the conversation. So Jonathan, we're going to kick everything off with you today, putting you on the hot seat. So today we're exploring the role of local action on sustainability and climate. How have local values shaped your community's approach to climate change? And can you share a few examples of your efforts to date?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think 5 years ago, you wouldn't have had a representative from Glenwood Springs here. Our community has shifted quite a bit to understanding the importance of that, not for any other reason than we've had to. We've had a number of fires, a Grizzly Creek fire, Storm King fire. We've lost lives, we've lost homes, and we've had a 500-year rain event that just happened last year that closed I-70 for 2 weeks and cost the state economy hundreds of millions of dollars. So people in Glenwood Springs are acutely aware of and have become acutely aware of climate change. The things that we've done locally, I'm pretty proud of, is we were the 7th city municipality in the nation to be 100% electric grid. So that's great. We're members of RAFTA, the 2nd largest transportation network in the state and the largest rural mass transit agency in the nation. And everything that we do, from as far as fleet purchasing, from electrical vehicles to how we look at building codes, just some of those easy things that we do on a basis are all driven and contemplated with how does this have an impact on our carbon footprint locally.
Thank you. Mayor Torre, I'm going to turn it over to you. How do local values shape your approach to climate change?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thanks to the AIMF and the UNMP for having these meetings here in Aspen. Welcome to everybody. Our local values are driving principles. We're lucky to have a community like Aspen that's long been steeped in environmental practice and environmental care. This council that I'm proud to be a part of is really just forwarding those values. We hear it very loudly and very clearly from our community. I'll give you a direct example of that is we conduct annual community surveys, and without fail, if it's not number one, top 3 items is about river quality and water, river health and water quality. So it's pretty interesting in Aspen, Colorado, that rises to the top year after year after year, but it does. We take that community values and we put them into action as best we can. What have we done? I'd say we've done a lot. We still have a lot to do, but I'd say the biggest things is really to have a climate action plan. We've taken a step back, looked at our conditions, looked at our goals and our values and where we want to go, and codified those into an actual plan. Along with that, we've got our stated goals. We're looking at getting to net zero for our community in GHG, 63% by 2030 and 100% by 2050. And I bring those up as it's important to kind of set a roadmap for yourself, set the goals for yourself, I think, and then start implementing and empowering our staff. We've got an amazing staff that work for the city of Aspen to carry out these items. So, we set our goals and then we empower the people to make those happen as best we can. There's plenty of examples of small things that we've done, bag bans, mandatory recycling service and those things, but really, it's about setting our goals and our targets and then having the experts that we have working towards those.
Thank you. I'm going to kick it over to you, Kim. Can you maybe tell us, what your experience is over in the Vail Valley?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for having me here. So similar to Aspen, I think Vail has really strived to have environmental stewardship as part of its identity from the beginning in its original town charter. And it's always been this dynamic tension between environment, economic development, and community, and really making sure that we can embrace all of those. And in the 70s, similar to Aspen, we had some thought leaders come over. We had Renee Dubois and Robert Redford and others, and really hosted a solar forum on how to learn about solar energy. And so it started there and picked up more in the 80s. We passed the real estate transfer tax, and that funds open space and environmental sustainability programs. So that really helps us now have a environmental sustainability department within the town. And in 2009, we had our first environmental sustainability strategic plan, which kind of really outlined a lot of initiatives in terms of zero waste, reducing reliance on single vehicles, reducing our energy emissions, and things of that nature. And so that was the beginning. And then in 2015, we really became part of the larger countywide climate action collaborative and set goals in alignment with the collaborative and the other municipalities in the valley and in Basalt as well, and have been working in tandem with that group to create policies to forward to our councils. Most recently, Vail adopted the new building codes and put in some above building code measures there. We've been doing more tangible things, transitioning our fleet to electric, bag bans, electrification of new affordable housing, looking at a couple more new affordable housing projects to be net zero, looking at our heated streets and how we can transition them off of gas and onto renewable electricity. So doing a pilot project there. We do have a lot more to do, and it's a very exciting time to be up here with the rest of you and thinking about how we might do more of that together.
Thank you. And then we'll wrap up this question with you, Greg. Would you mind taking a stab?
What have we done locally? I think when I hear everyone speaking here, it all sounds very familiar. Can you hear me? It sounds very familiar. We're on a similar track. I can share a personal anecdote. Several years ago, I was the chair of our board of commissioners, and a group of kids came in from the middle school and maybe high school, and they demanded we take action, that we declare a climate emergency. And it was amazing to watch my board respond, because I think it's amazing how uncomfortable a group of very young people can make you, and they come in and make a demand like that, because we might not have been sure how to respond, but we were all positive for it. So the upshot was that we declared a climate emergency, and we created a reporting program where whenever one of our departments comes to report, whether it's an annual report or a budget, something like that, the plan was that they have a climate lens through which they look at everything they do, and they talk about how this fits with our climate plan. And we've been sticking to that pretty well. There are times when it slips by and we forget to ask them, or they forget to tell us, but for the most part, this is the lens we've been looking through. And so from there, declared the climate emergency, the climate action plans and reports. We've been moving toward electrifying. So we're doing the same. We're building a microgrid out by our airport. We're working as a resiliency pilot project, you might want to call that. We've participated in the construction of a 35 megawatt solar farm just outside of town and got that through and producing power. My house looks right down at it, and it's actually, I love looking at the thing, I've got to say. We're working on building codes, and it gets pretty touchy when you start discussing in what is really a speculative real estate industry of such great proportion. When you start talking about changing building codes and land use plans, you start raising emotions, and so we're working on that now. We've engaged our community, and we have advisory committees that are coming in with convening now, who will be coming to us with plans and suggestions that we can then consider and implement for changing building codes, changing land use codes. We have been participating with our partners. When I look, I see partners up and down this row, because we've been partners already in regional collaboration with net zero housing for affordable housing at that. And so it's net zero affordable housing for teachers and workers in the community down in Basalt. I think everybody could speak about it because we're all in this together. There's much more, and anticipating that I'd forget what I already talked about, we prepared a one-pager. So out on the tables out there, there's a one-pager with hot links that you can all use to learn more about what we've been up to, and there's an awful lot happening there. So I'll stop there, but I want to encourage you to look for that one pager, and then also look for the books that are available to you as well. The Big Fix is available to anybody here who'd like it, and Speed and Scale, and then the Speed and Scale posters out there. If you've collected the book, get the poster too. It's very helpful. All right, thanks.
Thanks, Greg. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit to move from thinking about how we shape our climate actions at the local level to thinking more regionally. I'm going to start off with you, Mayor Kane. Regional collaboration is critical to plan for and scale the solutions we need to address climate change. But this kind of collaboration is also very hard to achieve. Given this, how can we foster a more robust regional approach to our shared climate goals?
Thanks very much. And yeah, it's an honor to be here. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in Basalt and maybe in a broader sense in the Mid-Valley. So Basalt, Colorado is home to the Rocky Mountain Institute. We're home to the Roaring Fork Conservancy and the Aspen Institute for Global Change. So we have no shortage of environmental activism in our community. Early on, we adopted in 2015 sustainable building codes. We have been declared a climate emergency. We are active participants in the CC4CA, Colorado Communities for Climate Action. We are actively pursuing 4 separate kind of advocacy programs that include extensive regional cooperation. So in order there, and I'll elaborate a little bit more, our efforts are devoted to controlling building emissions, transportation innovation, creation of new on-site renewable in the community, renewable sources of energy, and then overarching, which I think basically trumps almost everything else, is to ensure that we have sensible land use policies and that we have a high regard for preservation of open space and the natural environment. So it is, I'm happy to report that less than 24 hours ago, our town council, with counsel from Torre and with a lot of help from Holy Cross Electric Association, we adopted sweeping changes to our building code. This was by ordinance last night. We now, for type 1 construction in Basalt, require 25% offset for renewable energy. So if you're building a single family detached dwelling, you are going to build about 3 kilowatt hours per square foot in the building on site. And we adopted another kind of visionary piece, which everybody in this room is aware of, called the Roadmap to Net Zero, which is not politically easy to accomplish because one of the centerpieces is a gradual weaning away from any fossil fuel based space heating in our buildings. So our goal is by 2025 to have in type 1 construction 100% electric for new construction. The individual elements are in building codes. We have adopted sweeping changes under transportation. We are active participants with our regional partners in RAFTA. Half the folks in this room, we meet once a month to talk about regional transportation policies. We're working hard on first and last mile strategies to encourage more public transportation participation in our communities by overcoming the barrier of first and last mile. And we're making great headway with use of WeCycle, circulators, on-demand transit, which used to be difficult, now is becoming extremely successful. We are also undertaking, with support from our voters, we received 75% support in a public election last year to undertake the construction of renewables in our community. So we're building solar arrays with backup storage. We're going to pursue more micro hydro, which we've actually done. We've got a little plant that is producing. It's a little plant that is producing about 360,000 annual kilowatt hours that works 24/7, and it's fantastic. And so we're going to pursue more of that. But I think number 4, the overarching piece that I think we're going to have to work hardest on is managing growth and development. And we have adopted a very stringent urban growth boundary. I'm happy to report that our town now is surrounded on 80% of our perimeter is is congruent with deed restricted open space. So there's very little opportunity for annexation and conversion of agricultural lands to residential development. So, it's really gratifying to see that. I would love to harken back to the original question, though, is local values and how do local values influence all of this. And I think what we've witnessed in our community, and I think it's all true in Western Colorado, we are populated by folks that have come here and settled and made great sacrifices because they've come for the environment, they've come for this setting. And we live in a world where people are accepting the concept of income substitution. So everybody feels a sense of ownership for public lands and for the environment because folks have probably forfeited something in the way of a housing standard or income or something. They've made a sacrifice to live in this, which is made up for by the quality of the outdoor experience that we have. So that's a very big deal for us. But in terms of regional collaboration, we couldn't do this without Holy Cross, without Core, without Pitkin County, Eagle County, and all of our partners up and down the valley that have supported us. So we're at a very exciting time. We've got things that are going to unfold over the next 5 years. Are going to be going to constitute some pretty dramatic changes for us in the valley. So thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Matt, I'm going to turn to you. I'm going to touch on what Kim mentioned just briefly about the degree of collaboration you guys have over there in Eagle County. And I wonder if you can talk to us a little bit about how you achieved that, some of the challenges you identified along the way, and any advice you might have for the rest of us.
Well, thank you. And when you say we've achieved it, Kim and I talk about this quite a bit too, is we feel we've achieved something, but I don't know that we've achieved enough. When you talk about regionalism, I think in the question you'd ask, it was regionalism is essential. And I'd say it is because it's necessary. What I'm very proud of all of our communities, what we've been doing in all of our individual capacities and with what we've done as collaboration. But the reason we're doing all this is because it isn't happening where it needs to happen. We are essentially peeing in the ocean to try and warm it up by all the things that we're doing. We are way, way behind. And if we do everything we could possibly do, we are not going to solve climate change. But so what we need to do, and I think are getting much better at it, when you talk about regionalism, one of the things that we don't do as local governments enough, we are getting better because we now have a climate advocacy organization at the state level. So we are learning how to speak with a voice, but we do not enough, I think, even individually, use our power of advocacy at the state and federal levels. And that's where we have to exert that power. What we have done regionally is demonstrate what can be done. We can demonstrate our eagerness to do it, but climate is fundamentally an economic policy. We don't have those levers. We can do small things with tax and other things, but that really is where it has to happen. It has to be, and not just say at national levels, it's at the United States level. We have to do this to lead the way. We're one of the largest economies in the world, and our power, I think, is ultimately going to be creating that greater influence that has to get this thing done at a higher level. Arn Coney can only get arrested so many times before somebody's going to listen to what's happening here, what we have to do.
So really what you're saying about regionalism is that one of the great opportunities for a regional endeavor is to leverage that collective energy with the state and federal government. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for summarizing for me, Dallas. Yeah.
Thanks. So next I'm going to jump across and I'm going to pick on you, Ben. Can you take on this question about regionalism?
Sure. Yeah, same question.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. So the Roaring Fork Valley, for those of you who aren't from around here, makes regional collaboration additionally challenging. We have 3 counties between here and Glenwood Springs. We have 5 municipalities, different school districts, all those different overlapping or kind of almost competing jurisdictions. And I think that's a challenge. And what it sometimes sparks is almost like a competition amongst us where with some healthy competition, I think, of like, oh, well, Aspen did this, we better do it. And, you know, we hear that over in Crested Butte, they just initiated something, so we better do that. And I think that that can be really healthy and good, that we're all kind of striving to be on the cutting edge of policies that'll address the impacts of climate change. But then we formed some organizations that go over those jurisdictional boundaries. So RAFTA, that's the Roaring Fork Transit Authority, that all of us in the Valley are members of, and where, as someone else mentioned, we sit in meetings every month and work together to solve problems across those boundaries. For the Community Office for Resource Efficiency in the Upper Valley, and then Garfield Clean Energy, GCE, down in our part of the Valley, bring us together around specific energy and climate challenges. So in my mind, you know, if the question is how can we promote regionalism and collaboration to achieve our shared climate goals, I really have to put a lot of my faith in those kinds of efforts. And I can imagine a future in which we have an even stronger kind of overlaying organization for the whole valley or the Western Slope or the state or whatever it is. And maybe what we're competing for there is based on, you know, emissions reductions metrics, what projects get funding or something like that. Maybe we're all pitching into the same pool of money, and then we're pulling out of that based on, you know, I don't care if the project is in Aspen or Grand Junction or Carbondale. If it's going to reduce X number of metric tons of carbon from the atmosphere, that's a win. And I don't think we're quite there yet. You know, we still want to be the first one to net zero, and so do all of you, right? So we're kind of competing in that way, and I can imagine a future in which maybe we collaborate more around those goals and contribute to each other's projects, because the climate doesn't care where the reductions come from.
Thank you. Mayor Madsen, do you want to take a shot at this issue of collaboration or regionalism? Sorry.
You bet. It's you know, it's challenging, but it is also a socioeconomic challenge. I mean, what we have in Snowmass Village compared to the resources in Carbondale are very different. But it's you know, it's really important. You know, to Matt's point, we're trying to pee in the ocean. In Snowmass Village, we've put, you know, solar panels on our municipal buildings. We put in a micro hydro project. So we're working on it. Our environmental advisory board has been really helpful to help us, you know, guide us towards our initial goal in 2020 to getting 20% of our emissions controlled, and up by 2030, same as Aspen, 62.5% is a pretty lofty goal. How do we get there? I mean, I think we really have to look towards Holy Cross, which is our energy provider, to try and get them to become as efficient as possible. And regionally, that's what's really going to help us move the needle. It's really challenging to do these individual projects. Not that we don't need to do them, but we really do need to work together. And as Ben stated, RAFTA is a really important thing. I met with the Federal Transportation Association this morning. We're working on a new transportation facility in Snowmass Village. We want to get more people on the bus. We're looking at electrifying our fleet up there. So there's a lot that we can do. It's challenging. Yeah, it's a big rock to move, but we got to continue to push that rock up the hill, and working regionally is really going to help us reach that goal.
Thank you. So Jonathan, you're next. What can we do to do a better job of fostering this kind of regional collaboration in your view?
Yeah, I think that we have, as Ben kind of alluded to, you know, we have some systems in place with RAFTA. We have events that bring us together. You know, politically, we're all different jurisdictions, but we're united under a lot of different banners. And so I think looking at these institutions, whether it's, you know, we talk about affordable housing as an area of interest, and people keep saying, well, we need to do something like a RAFTA type environment. And, you know, finding a way that we can all unite under those banners, whether it be obviously affordable housing, transportation, or climate change, is something we have to be doing. And so I think these institutions, CORE, CLEAR, RAFTA, the counties need to be the leaders as we move forward.
Well, I like the sound of that. Thank you. Mayor Torre, I'll give you the last word on this.
Actually making some notes here. Number one, I would say communicate. This is great to have us all together on this stage, but going forward from this, we need to continue this conversation. We need to be communicating more. And that involves a lot of learning. I was in Breckenridge last week for a meeting of the Mountain Towns 2030, which is one of these umbrella organizations that does bring a lot of people together. And as we look in Aspen at our waste diversion and reductions, people were giving me examples that Carbondale is actually doing that is leading the way more than ourselves. And my ears perked up and I was like, well, I need to learn more about this. So getting in touch with Carbondale. Just anyway, so communicating, learning from each other, sharing best practices. Interesting to hear some of even what's been discussed up here, building codes. I'm looking at Philip, who's our community development director, and we just actually we're talking about our building codes as well in a work session as we prepare for adopting 2021 codes with some amendments to it as well. But hearing some ideas up here, even today, that we need to be sharing those best practices and moving together. Also, moving on legislation together. Recently, there's been some changes at the state level in Colorado that are allowing, that removed a preemption for certain products in our communities, polystyrenes and plastics. My interest is to work with other mountain communities to move some legislation forward together, to have a bigger voice to doing those kind of actions. Lobbying and leveraging. Kim was just talking as we were preparing for this panel about lobbying and leveraging together for some of those funds that are newly available at federal level. And so going to our state unified and asking for, your suggestions were some things around building retrofitting, electrifying bus systems. Somebody mentioned electrifying school bus systems. But going as a unified group and lobbying and leveraging that unity on a state and federal level. I also want to say another one of those umbrella organizations that brings us all together is CAST. CAST is actually going to be meeting in Glenwood Springs next month. So there are some organizations that are bringing us together, but again, we need to take it on ourselves and keep that communication going. I think a little bit more.
I just want to add to that. Thank you. I'm just feeling this strong sense of urgency from hearing all of the stories over the past 2 days of so many people living in these mountain communities around the world who are really experiencing extreme suffering and all kinds of things that we are not as much here. I mean, we have had some forest fires and floods, but not to the scale that I'm hearing about from others in this room. And so that's why I do think that right ahead of us, we have this incredible opportunity to take this group to Washington, D.C., and the power of our voices collectively within the outdoor recreation economy, which is huge in our state and our country, and say we've got these huge projects, and I can't wait another 5 years for that big budget item, these big boilers to be replaced. It needs to happen right away. So I'm really feeling that we need to continue the conversation and learning, but I'd like to find something that's really actionable quite soon.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, jump in, Greg.
Yeah, if I could add on, just very briefly, I'd mentioned earlier to Kim when we were meeting before this that I feel envy for Vail sometimes. And as an Aspen native, I confess that's not always what we talk about because we've always been so competitive. But Vail's doing such amazing things with energy that we're all paying attention now. It's like you guys are leading the way, and virtually everyone here, every community here is leading the way. I did want to say one thing about what motivates us, the things that motivate us, which I'm hoping people from here would take away. We all kind of get it, we're working, we get the sense of urgency. But what I'm hoping to see and what I'm always striving for is to see our communities, people in the communities taking action. Citizens being involved. This isn't something that only elected officials can do, only leaders at a federal or a state level can do. I think citizen advocacy is so important. The reason I brought Hal Harvey's book up here, The Big Fix, Hal Harvey, an Aspen native who's a climate consultant, talks about the power of community action. He talks about school kids, once again, who go and demand that their school boards electrify the buses to prevent asthma. There's a really practical reason for this, for them. There are other solutions like that, but the whole point is everyone can be involved in this, and it needs to get down to that level, because when the higher you go with the federal government, you start running into things like professional lobbyists and others, and we can go and work, and I think we should. I'd love to join Kim in Washington, but I also want to make sure we've got the strong citizen groups backing us up, because they're going to be the ones who elect us or remind us what our job one is. So I'm putting a word in there for citizen advocacy, and really it's going to come down to virtually every one of us if we're going to try to reach these lofty, lofty goals we've set. Thanks.
Thanks, Craig. That's a great segue, actually, for the next question. This is our final question, or at least the final one from me for now. I want to kick this off with Ben, if you wouldn't mind taking this on first. Given the need for greater collaboration across communities with different values, which we've established, I think, today, what kind of language should we use to engage the widest possible range of stakeholders in the fight against climate change? And this is really about citizen engagement, I think.
Yeah, thanks. And that's a question that I think really resonates probably with Jonathan and myself. You know, we represent communities that are in Garfield County. And again, for those of you who aren't familiar with the area, Garfield County is one of the biggest natural gas and oil producing counties, mostly natural gas in the state and sometimes in the country. And so it's within our county, we have communities that are very reliant on the natural gas industry for jobs and tax revenue and their basic economic life. And then we have Carbondale kind of hanging off the east end of the county. That's a very different place, and that isn't connected to that industry and has this real focus on weaning ourselves off of fossil fuels. What we found, and I'm going to give credit to Garfield Clean Energy, the collaborative group that's been put together with members from every jurisdiction in the county, is that some language that helps us talk about these things together are words like efficiency. I wrote down a couple things here. Independence, energy independence sort of resonates across political divides. Affordability, talking about lowering people's electric bills, and stability, things like that. That's those are things that even if somebody isn't really into all the climate science and might not even be fully on board with the urgency of the challenge that I think everybody in this room is on board with, they can get on board with that kind of stuff. So finding some language where you can kind of bridge a divide and say, we all believe in these things, even if they mean a little bit different things to us, they end up with the same actions and the same outcomes.
That's great, thank you. Matt, I'd like to ask you that same question about how do we message more effectively to really trigger citizen engagement?
You said, I think, language, and I may be splitting hairs, but I don't know if, at least in our community, I think we may be past the language piece. We used to be, because it was, do you call it climate change or climate catastrophe and get everybody's attention and get them to do something? I think in our community, people pretty much agree that climate change is happening. It's bad, it's human caused, and we need to do everything we can at every level to do something about it. I think what our opportunity is, both at the local level and probably more federal, is to really look at this in a narrative and storytelling way. I think all of us, at least in the United States, and I think a lot of Western countries as well, have really been part of a narrative that I don't even know if we realize we're part of. I think you could best summarize it by calling it trickle-down economics. This idea that you simply let the private business sector go unregulated and all good things will happen for everybody. How's that working out for us so far is my analysis of that one. So do we need to start talking about things differently as, say, prosperity economics? If the goal of even trickle-down economics is prosperity for the most amount of people, as much prosperity as possible, why don't we talk about prosperity for people? Why isn't that the objective? We can create an economy with a mobile, educated, healthy, productive workforce that serves our business community very well, that creates effective and equitable democracies. Why isn't that our narrative? And it isn't just because we haven't decided that yet. These are just decisions. Our economics is policy decisions. We imagine it as that this is how economies work, and the government's job is to clean up market failures on the back end. That is, to use an artful term, bullshit. We can create the new narrative, and I think it goes beyond language. It's having all of us think differently so that we could have Garfield County, that has depended so much on fossil fuel in its economy, think differently. Make sure we're taking care of those people no matter what happens, and just tell a different story.
That's really great. I'm just going to ask a follow-up question. Can you talk a little bit more about that concept in the context of climate change specifically? How would that play out?
So climate change, I think, I look at all of these things as an economic issue. Climate change, wealth disparities, healthcare access in the United States, these are all, would have been the same economic decision. The way we have treated the role of government particularly, there are three roles in an economy. There's essentially producers, consumers, and regulator. And you lose any one of those legs of the stool, you no longer have a market. And what we have said for the past 50 years, or at least we've gotten more and more this way, is this idea that you simply let businesses have what they want and have essentially all the political power, and things will go swimmingly. And I think it's clear that they haven't. And we used to do economics differently, and we had great prosperity in this country, essentially from the end of World War II up to the middle 70s, until we changed our perspective and brought back the wealthy corporations that we had gotten rid of 50 years earlier. And so if we can start talking about that at a local level, start creating this new narrative, start voting for the people who will carry that narrative, and ultimately have the political power then to pass the policies that fit that narrative, that's how we have to change this. All this work we're doing at the back end will then become an essential part of our economy, rather than things that we're trying to invest in and hoping that we can make sustain over our small economic timeframes.
Thank you.
Can I mention something real quick? So Vina is another municipality in Garfield County. When we talk about talking to different people of different political persuasions, I think that we look at in 2020, we had four of the five largest wildfires in state histories in 1 year. In the last 30 months, we've had 8 of the last 10 largest fires in state history ever. I mean, those are things that can't be denied. Those are things that can't be looked over. You look at the bathtub rings and the stories that come out every single day seemingly about Lake Powell. There's an 11-county Colorado River district that just passed overwhelmingly, 72%, I believe, for water quality and conservation in largely rural conservative communities. So talking to ranchers, talking to conservative counties, talking about water conservation. And, it wasn't too long ago you didn't want to talk to a conservative about climate change or global warming, because that was them's fighting words. I think we do a disservice when we say, at least in our area, climate change. I think we need to be talking about the airification of the West. That is something that ranchers can get behind. That's something that the people who look at these wildfires that threaten Garfield County, Pine Gulch, Grizzly Creek, Storm King, Colston, I could go on and on and on. But those are things that, we have wildfires that almost took out the town of Boulder, the city of Boulder, in December. These are things that can't be denied. So talking about wildfire, talking about water, I think are things that are unique to the West and the airification of the West that will transcend potentially the hippy-dippy conservative push-pull that we sometimes have gotten ourselves wrapped around the axle on.
That's great. Thank you. Kim, I want to turn it to you because I saw your hand up. I want to follow up on that, though, just for a second. Is there a threshold at which, it's not a scare tactic to raise these points because they're just facts, but are we just scaring people into inaction? Does it seem overwhelming perhaps at some point is my question? Maybe not, but I was
that
going to
for
ask
Kim?
I was going to ask Kim, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and as a teacher, professor at college, yes, students, they need to be supported and, given opportunities to act and have agency and build that sense of hope in community with one another. That is so important that we cultivate that, not only for our young people and students, but for all of us working together, feeling like we can do better together. Another piece I wanted to add on is that there's a lot of social science in this realm of what resonates with people when communicating about climate change. And one of the things I'd just like to add, because I agree with what's already been said up here, is family and future generations, and the idea of whether or not you believe that it's human-caused climate change, some may not, but that we don't want to take the risk of leaving the world a better place for our future generations, for grandchildren and their grandchildren. So I think that that is one of the biggest motivators for people at that more heartfelt values level that we have to remember, I think, can speak across so many of our differences, because we all want to care about the future of our families, our planet, the biodiversity, all the other species around us, and make sure that we're doing our best to create a better future.
Thank you. So Mayor Madsen, I want to kick it over to you. In your community, it's been growing quite a bit lately. And, how do you think about these, whether it's narrative or messaging or language, when you're talking about climate change in your community?
Well, fortunately, I think we're in a situation where a lot of us are pretty learned about the environment and care deeply about it. Development in Snowmass Village, we have a building going in right now called Electric Pass, which is a 100% electric building that's going in. That's the kind of development that we're trying to encourage in Snowmass Village. It's challenging, right? I mean, we have a road called Snowmelt Road. I mean, we just replaced the boilers so that they're more efficient, but they're still gas-powered boilers. To Kim's point on how do you electrify that, we cannot not, it's a safety issue. We got to be able to melt the roads. So it's a challenge for us. But I think we need to continue to communicate. We need to make sure that we're listening to the community and listening to people like you who are real experts in the field and trying to really bring those values to our community and make sure that we're spreading them throughout the rest of our communities.
Thank you. Mayor Kane, I'd like to give you the last word on this one.
Great, thanks. I think it's an interesting challenge because we as citizens in our community look around the world and we see the very charismatic and very kind of tragic consequences of climate change. We've got a Category 5 hurricane with storm surges in southern Florida happening as we speak that are unprecedented. So there is empathy at an enormous sort of global level for those things. Locally, what our kids, they feel an extreme kind of tangible connection to loss of winter, the threat of fire, and the loss of our whitewater and water resources. The decline of Lake Powell, Lake Mead, and the decline of the very charismatic Colorado River really ring true for our next generation. Aspen Skiing Company undertook a program in terms of language, and the motto was let's keep winter cold, and that did connect with kids. And so we're heavily vested in the natural environment here, not only because we love it and respect it, but it's also a great source of our opportunity to engage with the outdoors. And so preservation of skiing, mountain recreation, whitewater rivers, the fisheries and all of that implies. I think these are really tangible connections for kids in our valley. And while I think there's enormous empathy for what's occurring on the global front with some, basically submergence of low-lying, island groups that are displacing people throughout the planet, I think there's great empathy, but there's also an opportunity to get kids connected to the immediate consequences of our greenhouse gas emissions and dependence on fossil fuels.
Thank you. So we have a few minutes, and I was told not to do this, but I don't usually follow rules very well. So I wanted to open it up and give the audience an opportunity to ask a question. We might be able to take one or two. Yeah, in the back in the blue shirt. Yeah, right there.
Hi, my name's Armand Coney. I'm a recovering politician, former Eagle County Commissioner, and I'd like to start by saying I want to thank you all for your public service. And I think 6 mayors and 2 commissioners is a royal flush. I was served between 2001 and 2009. And you would have never seen a group like this so committed to working on solution regionally on climate change. 2 things. One, this is an international event. We live in probably the most, we are probably some of the most white privileged people in the world here in these ski countries. And there's been discussions from people all over the world. Do you see any kind of responsibility for what America has done in creating the climate crisis faster than any other country and having greater impacts to some of the most poorest countries in the world? And then the second question is something that Mayor Langmaid talked about. Connor Hall from the governor's office was here yesterday and today, and he was talking about the $500 billion that the federal government is releasing from the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act in terms of helping out with solutions of climate. He has been willing to talk to our federal delegates, senators and congresspeople, to try to find those dollars and see how they could be implemented as piloted projects in mountain communities where they could be implemented pretty quickly. I had the opportunity to go to Washington more than a couple, 2-3 times while I was commissioner. Are any of you willing to work with the governor's office and work with what Kim was talking about and seeing if we could get some of those resources faster than anyone else and work towards solution? Thank you.
Is there anyone in particular you'd like to address that to?
Whoever's willing to get on a plane in the next 90 days and go to Washington and make it rain and bring home the bacon like a good politician.
Yeah, go.
I'll start because I think I can say this kind of quickly. You said a lot there. I'll try to go through it. Responsibility in America as far as the rest of the world is concerned. Absolutely. I do think that, we have a lot of opportunity in our political environment here in the United States to take leadership and active role. And I think that we should. It dovetails with kind of what I was going to answer for your last question about the dialogue and the narrative around this. Arn, I think you hit right on it. This discussion needs to be about people. You look at the people that have come from all over the world to address this issue here together, hearing some of the stories about some of the climate catastrophes that they're having where they are. I don't know if people agree with this or not, but it's not about saving the planet. It's about saving the people. And we need to make this more about what people can do, their own actions that they can do in their life, as well as the cause here is about the global united people that we should be and that we're not right now. So that's my answer for what you were saying about the narrative. Arn, yes, to finish up with your questions, We were talking earlier, and we are all ready to get on that plane and go to DC and start leveraging these. I think it's new opportunity. In a lot of ways, it's new opportunity. These dollars and this view from Washington has not been there until maybe now, and we've got to seize this opportunity as great as we can. So we were already having those conversations about joining forces and doing exactly that. I don't know if I missed anything else in some of your questions.
You mind if I take real quick? First off, I wasn't kidding about Arn Manconi, who's been doing the yeoman's work about getting arrested for the cause of climate and a lot of other things at our nation capital. So thank you, Arn, for that, for taking the hard one for the team. When you talk about the responsibility of the United States, I keep making this point that that our problem is an economic one, and you don't have to look much farther than right now. The United States, to serve its own economy, is raising interest rates, creating a very strong dollar globally. And that is a gut punch to most other economies in the world, given the role of our economy within it. And you want to see somebody start making bad climate decisions? Well, you make them have to make survival decisions every day, or more fundamental economic ones. That is going to be a climate problem for us from the nature of our economy within the global economy.
I think we have time for one more person to chime in on this before we're kind of closed out. Anyone want to take a shot?
I mean, I think it's been said. I think we all probably would agree that, yeah, we take responsibility as a country, and we should therefore be the most proactive as we can. I think Europe's been ahead of us on this for a while, and also shares a lot of that early carbon emissions in history and causing the problem. And then I think we're all united on going after that funding and trying to seize this opportunity.
I just wanted to add that because I think this group is pretty unique. I'm gonna claim uniqueness here in this, with this valley, in this region of the state. We actually have something we can share with others. There are other communities out there that don't have climate action plans and climate commitments, or boards or advisory boards. So I'm hoping one thing we can do as part of our responsibility is help export some of the expertise we've gained with our microgrids and our solar farms and our land use codes, so that we can actually help help others move along. They can learn from our experience, whether it's with affordable housing or net zero, all the things that we're doing which require us to go down on a limb, but we're fortunate enough we can afford to do that here. So I think that the collective wisdom we're gaining through the hard work is something we can export and share with others. And I'd like to open that invitation. I'd really love to meet the delegates from around the world who are here, to learn from them, but then also to find out what we could share. Thanks.
Okay, one more question, and then we really do have to wrap it
It's
up.
actually not a question, Sarah, I apologize. This has been an amazing panel, and we've been talking about youth and engaging youth. And so I really want to thank Tim and Claire from the city of Aspen, who actually put this together, two young people working for the city. I don't know if they're here, but thank you. And of course, our board member, John Starr. And then very quickly, last night, you all received 2 books, one from John Doerr, amazing book, and this other book from, this is it, no. Anyway, 2 books, and our commissioner, Greg Poschman, went to great effort to get hundreds of these to give to all of you, and I just wanted to thank you.
Thank you. Well, this has been a great conversation. My hope is that this is the catalyst for more. I'd love to see more conversations, and then maybe getting to that institution building that some of us were talking about. I think that's a very needed next step. But thank you all so much for going deep. I really appreciate it, and I hope the conversations don't end. We're going to have a reception just after, so if you had questions or weren't able to ask them, please, I think everyone up here would love to hear from you. So please grab us at the reception, and thank you all for attending. We very much appreciate it.